Hello, everyone that's watching. Now, I want to address quickly before the main segment of why I didn't post yesterday. I ran into some technical issues with my computer, so I did not have the time to post it. Also, I had work, so I didn't have time to solve the technical issues and then actually record a video. So today, I'm actually going to be recording two videos. One is going to be about Snap, and the others probably I've not quite decided yet. But you'll have to wait and see. So let's now get on to the main segment. Now, my first one's going to be about Snap, as I just said. And just now, the Supreme Court ended up actually handing a victory to Trump because a little earlier on in the week, a lower court ended up issuing an injunction against the Trump administration requiring them to fully fund Snap for the next month. Now, the question is, how do you do that when the government is shut down? So, and you have to end up cutting everything as much as possible. Now, Stamps is not considered a a necessary function under the act that gives the federal government power to limit what the executive branch to limit what's necessary and what's not necessary for the government for people to run. And Snap does not fit under something that relates to national security or public security, and that Stamps does not technically fit under that requirement. So it doesn't, and it's not funded through, and it's funded through a continuing resolution and yearly appropriation packages. So this isn't funded without the. This wouldn't technically be funded under a government shutdown, and that's by law. So that means that it should technically be cut. But the thing is, the court injunction from the lower court said it needed to be funded. So they're actively, the lower court, saying that it's basically what they're saying is that it's required for safety, basically. And that's technically not true. So basically the Supreme Court's basically stepped in and basically said the lower court's basically wrong, and it's a temporary stopping of the court injunction. So this is a win for Trump, as he ends up being able to decide for the next couple of weeks, or maybe a couple of days, depending on how the lower courts react. He basically gets to decide whether Stamps go out or not. And that's good for him, because he was originally wanting to cut it because, the government shut down and it shouldn't be funded by law. So it's a win for him. And then the question is it actually a win for the American people? Honestly, I don't think the Stamps issue is overblown. Now, I do agree some people do need the food stamps or SNAP benefits for a short term. But I think the fact that, I think it says down here, 1 in 8 Americans are on it, they do not need to be on this. That's an insane amount. That's 12.5% of Americans. Now, that's a large portion of Americans that really don't need to be on it. And I think a lot of them are mainly people that just don't want to work, because it's quite easy to actually get the money required to live. So if I go over to here, if you look at, let's go over here, average wage for low skilled workers, 17 to 19 dollars per hour. Now, 17 times, I'm going to say 60 hours, because if you're doing low skilled work, honestly, you should be working a lot more. And I think on average a person can do 60 hours of work, because, for example, me, I go to school. That's 40 hours. Plus, it's going to be some hours for extra times out, for homework outside of school. And then I work 20 to 30 hours a week, or no, around 20 hours a week. And that's very doable, and I have plenty of free time still. For example, I'm doing this, and I'm not even counting that into the calculation. So I think 60 hours is viable for the average person. Now, it's not ideal, but if you're doing low-skilled work, in my opinion, you really should be working as much as possible, because either if you're doing low-skilled work, A, you didn't actually put enough effort into your own education to actually get an increased skilled work. Additionally, this is going to be, for most people, low-skilled jobs are going to be a temporary thing. And those temporary things they're going to be there for a short amount of time, while you're also getting an education or something like that. Or you could also, for low-skilled work, you could also get a lot of the times, for example, I work at, if you work at some place, particularly if it's not if it's stocking a place at a big grocery store, either Costco or Walmart or Target, you don't actually need to be listening. You don't have to be you can have something like an earbud in, and you can actually learn through that too. So these jobs are going to be more temporary. So I think 60 hours is probably viable. Now, of course, you're going to have to get 2 jobs, because most jobs don't allow you to work over 40. Because then there's the laws for overtime pay, and honestly, I hate that law, because because people that need to actually incentivize companies not to actually have someone working for as much as they want. For example, if I wanted to, let's say if I was older, and I wanted to work at the place I currently work, I can't work over 40 hours. So, and the place I work, probably working 40 hours would not be enough to pay a living. But if I worked 60 hours, and at the current pay level, without at the current pay level, 60 hours a week at the current pay level, I could actually live and actually have a decent amount, decently well living. Although I would be extremely frugal on everything, I could actually probably get 4 to 5,000 if you go at the low end for everything that costs. But now that I can't do that additional 20 hours, it's not very livable, so I'll have to get a second job. So I actually honestly hate the overtime work system. Now, if you're doing salary, then you've agreed to only work 40 hours a week. And then at that point, you need the additional overtime pay, because you're actually, You've actually agreed to only work 40. So you actually do need to actually pay them extra, because they're actually doing extra work. But that we're talking about hourly pay here. So let's see that. So you're going 60 hours a week, and then 52 weeks in a year. You get around, that's your income, and this is the low end. So then if you go taxes on a income of 53,000 a year nationwide. So yeah, it obviously depends on which state you're in, but let's see. So let's go with the $1,000 estimate here, and the $11,000 estimate for taxes. There you go. Now, let's go average apartment cost. Cost for a 1-bedroom, because you're only one person, so you don't need a bigger apartment. So to go with the higher estimate, since we're going to be overly conservative here. Do that. And then times 12, because that was monthly. Then let's go food cost. Average cost of food. for a single person, around $500, 600. So let's go again with, let's again go with the overly conservative look here. So that's 560 times 12. Then let's go average cost of utilities per month for a 1-bedroom apartment. It's going to be around $300 if we go again with the more conservative look. Then if you go here and then average cost of let's see. So it's looking, health insurance. Employ your health insurance. Sponsored. That is not right. 'Cause the other day I was looking at it and it said 100. Average employee pays around $1,200 for annual coverage, and around that's what I thought. Since I was saying like total cost for like employers and people, but this is what I was looking for. So this, you could calculate that in. So let's do minus 1,400. And if you go, so we're also got to have a car. So car, low cost used car, average low cost used car price. So low cost reliable options start around there, with a good budget closer to $10,000. Let's go to $10,000, and then assuming since you're not going to be able to pay that like upfront immediately, let's look at $10,000. 10,000 monthly payment. A car loan, monthly payment for a car loan, $10,000 car loan. $10,000 car loan depends on, well, we're assuming that you have an actually good like credit score and you're responsible with money to start with. So we could go with the most expensive option, and we'll do that. So 300 times 12, and then so that's like the monthly car payment, and then gas. Average price of gas for car per month. It's going to be around $200 there. So minus 200 times 12. And you've covered all the necessities, and you still have $3,000 over. And again, that's all with an extremely conservative estimate, where we're doing the highest cost, the lowest average income, for like average monthly wage for low skilled workers. And you still have $3,000 left over. So you can put that in an emergency fund. And again, this is like you're not spending extra money on extra things like on fast food or extra expensive trips. So if you're actually financially responsible, you're actually able to live without any assistance with anything, as long as you work hard and you actually end up being at least financially responsible. Because you're not buying an expensive car, you're buying a reasonably sized apartment. And again, you can even be even cheaper. As I said, I went with all the high-end estimates for averages. And additionally, so you can actually find ways to cut that. And I know food, you can easily get it down to less than $100 if you're going with the cheapest possible options. And you're budgeting and you're finding sales and stuff like that. So it's actually viable for you to actually have even more money left over at the end of the day. So even without any assistance at all, you can easily live working low skilled labor as long as you work hard and actually be financially responsible. So that's one of the reasons I think the stamp issue is overblown. It's either A, the people that are on stamps are not working at all. And first of all, if they're not working at all and they're just living on there, first of all, they don't deserve to even be on stamps because they're not, they're not living on it. And they're just living on it, and they're perpetually living on it. And we shouldn't be funding, as taxpayers, we shouldn't be funding someone that's not willing to actually benefit society and work to benefit others. So it's either A, yeah, they're not working it and they're personally just living off the system for free. Or again, there's other options, other circumstances, like, for example, mothers with children. Now, the thing is, that's under stamps. We have other programs for that. For example, WIC, Women's, Infants, and Children's benefits like that. Now, I do agree that sometimes we should increase those, but still, they have their own benefits there. Additionally, like, if someone's on disability, they have disability benefits, so those are already being paid for. So stamps is like, and additionally, women's, mothers, and children aren't like 25%, 12 it's not that large of the percentage of the population. And additionally with disability, again, that's also a smaller portion of the population. So there's no reason that 12% of Americans are on stamps. There's no reason for that. As again, we just showed the calculations. If you reasonably work hard, and do all that, and even with low skilled worker, you don't have any basic level of education. You're not working as, for example, you're not working as an electrician, or you don't have a college degree. You can still live easily, or not. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough, but you can still live and survive off of the income that you're making. And there's no reason as taxpayers that we should be supporting people that can do that and have the option to do that, and yet they don't. And it's unfair to taxpayers because, they're not benefiting society, so why should we help them? And they're actively being lazy and other things like that. Or they have made other bad decisions. For example, if someone was addicted to drugs, that would be another reason they would be poor. But why should we be supporting their addiction by giving them food stamps? Because most of the people with food stamps actually don't end up using that money for actual food. They actually end up trading the food stamps for then drugs, basically. So why should we be supporting that? So I actually think the stamps issue is way overblown, and I think most welfare is overblown. And we should get rid of a decent portion of it. If you see our budget, let's look at the budget. U.S. debt clock. If you look at the budget here, we are already in a massive deficit. And having this massive welfare state is actively hurting that, because if you look at here, all of these costs, look at the two major programs, Medicare and Medicaid. They're the ones that have the massive cost. And even if we just cut Medicaid, guess what? Our federal budget deficit is down to the bottom. And same with Social Security. Now, I know that those programs are actually necessary in some way, but I think still the welfare state shouldn't be there. And additionally, other programs are massive too. Because look, this deficit is not not sustainable. This is around around 7% of our GDP. This deficit here. Now it is going down because we have Trump in presidency right now, and he's trying to cut as much things as possible. But still, we shouldn't have that. That's going to hurt the future generation, particularly my generation, because we're going to have to pay off all that. And if we just keep letting it increase, we're eventually going to run into a situation where we have so much debt that this right here, this is already larger than defense, the national interest. Eventually, that will take around 50% of the budget. And then we really won't have any room for Medicare, Social Security, or any other welfare stuff, or anything that actually benefits our citizenry. And this is, and so we really need to cut as much as possible right now. And I think that includes major welfare issues. I actually particularly, I don't know enough about Medicare and Medicaid to say that we should cut Medicare and Medicaid, but I know a decent amount about Social Security, and I think we should at least get a way, have a way for it to like slowly transition to where it's a more sustainable system. Since right now it's basically a pyramid scheme, where the younger generation just pays for the older generation, and it just goes from there. It's basically a government-sponsored pyramid scheme, basically, and it's basically reliance on an increasing population. If you ever look at a population pyramid, the ideal one is where the lower population is going to be bigger than the older population, and you want it to be a pyramid, basically. And it's reliant on that pyramid being there, and the lower population becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and producing more and more and more. But that's not happening. First of all, because our population is shrinking, we don't have a big enough fertility rate. So it's going to be a massive issue there. And we have a fertility rate, I think, around 1.7. Replacement's around 1.2. And that's not enough. So our population's, well, it's expanding due to immigration. And that's a whole nother issue. But still, it's not expanding fast enough to where we can help cover the older population. And then there's also the... Additionally, with productivity, we still have increased productivity, but it's still not enough to cover the expenses of the newer generation. So it's not sustainable. And if you look at it, and most people think like the money goes into like a fund for Social Security, and it really does not. It goes directly to pay other people's, the older population's direct expenses. Like for the younger people, goes to pay that. And then there's some of it goes to excess. The thing is that excess is, we don't have a surplus in terms of like payroll taxes and payments anymore. In fact, Social Security payments are now larger, are bigger than like the income from payroll taxes. So, and the only money that actually goes into the fund is the excess. But now we're actually drawing on that fund. And the fund's only now around $2 trillion. Yet we have a large portion of unfunded liabilities that the future generation, because the future generation thinks they're going to get this Social Security. Like, I don't think I'm going to get it, but people that are like 50 and 60 think they're going to get it. But the thing is, the $2 trillion is not enough to fund their retirement. And as you can see, like right now, this is just expenditures this year. So $2 trillion would only last a year. So it's nowhere near enough. And additionally, what's in the fund is they're basically holding government bonds. So basically, none of the money's actually there because they've just, for the trust fund, it's all in government bonds, which is basically government debt. So the money that's there is just government debt. And so basically, the government used Social Security, like the actual thing, and then so they transferred that money basically to the normal federal government, and then just gave the Social Security fund bonds. But what happens if all of a sudden those $2 trillion dollars in government bonds gets called on? It's just going to shift the national debt. It's not going to do anything. So what's actually there is not really there. So Social Security it's not sustainable. So I actually think it should be cut. And that also goes off of like basic welfare. I also think, for example, like for retirement, I thought a retirement system. So we currently have like 401ks and Roth IRAs and stuff like that. So I was actually thinking, instead of like payroll taxes and stuff like that, payroll taxes and Social Security, what we do is that we have like a smaller tax, and we cut the payroll taxes, we cut Social Security. Then we have like a smaller tax of around 5%. And it's not actually a true tax, because 5% of like your income is required to go to like a retirement account. And that retirement account, then you put it in a retirement account and you're allowed to invest it or whatever. And now the average annual return is around 8%. If you include inflation, it's around 5%. But still, that compound income interest actually gets you a whole bunch of income, and it's going to be enough for you like to live on once you retire. And unlike like and then with that we could also get rid of that with also we could also get like get with that we could also get rid of like the 401k and the Roth IRA, and then just have that one retirement account where you can contribute like extra money to it, like besides the 5%. And then after that, even though and then we after that it's still gonna have us like a small tax afterwards, like a 5% capital gains tax. But the thing is, that money will go to fund people that have disabilities um, and people with disabilities and that are lower incomes that have smaller retirement accounts. So that will actually benefit people that have actually been poor there. That will also benefit us because first of all, you're getting less taxes in the first place because you're shrinking from like a practically a 15% tax for Social Security because 7% is paid by the employers, 7.5% is paid by the employers, 7.5% is paid by you, but it's practically a 15% tax because the employers will still, they'll basically dock the pay by 7.5%, and that's what they do in comparison to what they would actually give you because they still got to pay that other 7.5% of payroll tax. So yeah, you would basically get a 10% cut in taxes while also decreasing the deficit and allowing for more like personal responsibility. Additionally, it would also incentivize people to actually get out and work too, because as I was saying earlier, there's no reason for 10.25% of the U.S. population to be on food stamps when you can live and have a decent income if you work hard enough and actually do a job and don't just lay on your butt. So that's one way to actually decrease the deficit. So I really do not like the welfare state. Now, again, I did mention that I do support welfare, particularly like for mothers, infants, and children, because particularly like now women, they do have an issue with the fact that whenever they go into like they're pregnant and they go into childbirth and whatever, they actually do have to. You have to have like maternity leave or whatever. Because you got to take care of the child to start with, and also you're recovering from the pregnancy itself. So I actually strongly support like welfare for them because they actually need that help because they're not able to work. And then additionally, children are an extra cost for the average person, and we want to protect our children as much as possible. And also, we want to incentivize the more children to be produced because I mentioned earlier our fertility rate's less than the replacement, and we need that to be there, like that our fertility rate to be there, so you have like a thriving future as a nation. So adding like welfare incentives for children, that's also a really good idea too. Because then you have, again, improvement, an incentive to actually have children, which we need. And then it also protects our children and allows them to actually grow. It also allows them for, like, better nutritional stuff. And since they're actually getting, like, extra money, they can actually, the parents can actually support the children and their, like, needs. So, infants and children, like that stuff, that should all be funded in. And I think that actually should be increased. But what I do not like is just general welfare to anyone that needs it. Now, I do also think that there should be like a short-term welfare, like unemployment, like to support someone if they get like unemployed for a short time. But it should only be like for a short amount of time, like incredibly short. And additionally, it shouldn't. And if someone's like hopping from one job to another for like a short like. Let's say one person gets a job, then they're fired after 2 months. First of all, they also shouldn't get it in benefits either because they're not actually, being responsible and actually trying to work their job seriously. So Like short-term employment, that's good, but SNAP, it's never been like that. It's with 1 in 4 Americans, that many people are not. That many people should have the ability to work, um, and they, yeah, it shouldn't be there in the first place. Um, and as I showed you, like the calculation there a minute ago, and they still had leftover money. And again, that was with you not being frugal. It's with you being basically a little bit frugal. But the thing is, you can be even more frugal, like trying to find the cheapest apartment, trying to find the cheapest food, trying to find the using utilities sparingly. So if you're actually able to do all that, you should be able to easily live, and that's without like long-term welfare. So I'm actually really glad that the injunction happened there, since it'll also show that the food stamps thing is overblown, because again, people can just go out and get a job. Um, and I know there's a meme about that saying no job, but seriously, if you actually go out and get a job, work hard, and do everything that you're supposed to do, um, you can live pretty well within America, and it's going to be a lot better than almost any other place. So yeah, I'm glad that he's at least that it's cutting it for a slight amount of it, and I think honestly he should just cut a lot more, because this number right here, yeah, that's eventually going to be paid by the future generation, and this is just going to increase, and we won't have anything that's necessary for our nation. So just cut, and yeah, I just cut, and I really dislike welfare, and I think we should just cut as much of it as possible.